more so in the future. But I got a feeling that barcode, even though it's been there for 50 years, I think it's going to hang around for quite a lot longer because these other things aren't going to be as cheap. I mean, we're talking about fractions of a cent uh, to to put them on the merchandise.
In the world of technology, heroes are everywhere. They're overcoming disruption, delivering sustainable outcomes, and fearlessly forging the future to solve what's next. Join me, Ed McNamara, as we meet the people and businesses driving change in our constantly disruptive world. This is Innovation Heroes, a podcast brought to you by SHI. Innovation Heroes is a production of SHI. See how we can help your business solve what's next with stress-free, scalable solutions that you and your people will love. Visit shi.com/solve what's next today. Look around you and you'll likely see a barcode or two. They are everywhere. They're on drink bottles, food packages, books, and more. Barcodes are scanned more than 10 million times a day. And nothing sounds more like being in a supermarket than that familiar beep, beep, beep of barcodes being scanned. But for the younger generation, you might not remember a time without barcodes. Grocery store clerks needed to manually change the price sticker on each product every time the price changed one way or another. Welcome back to another episode of Innovation Heroes, the podcast exploring the people and businesses driving change in a constantly disrupted world. I'm your host, Ed McNamara. Paul McEnroe was part of developing the Universal Product Code, or UPC, commonly known as the barcode. He was an engineer at IBM at the time when a group of supermarkets requested a technology like this to make the checkout process more accurate and efficient. To get barcodes functional, Paul also was part of teams developing the handheld pistol grip scanner that reads barcodes from a distance, as well as new communications and other systems. Paul, thanks for being here today.
It's my pleasure.
So, as I mentioned, barcodes are all around us in our day-to-day lives, but I'm sure most of us either don't know or haven't given any thought to what those black lines mean and how the technology works. Can we start very simply with what is a barcode? How does it work at a basic level? And why was it designed that way?
Sure. A barcode is just a way to put a mark of some type onto a product, packaged product, or a product that is actual, maybe a piece of fruit or something like that, and to be able to identify it by some method, which is typically a number. And the bars are an easy way for one to be able to set up a scanner to read what the numbers would be rather than trying to decipher the different characters. So for every character, we have two bars and a couple of spaces that we have put into a code. And in order to uniquely identify all the different products that would be in a different supermarket or other retail store, uh, we allocated, or McKinsey and Company, that was hired by the supermarkets, allocated 5 digits for a manufacturer and five more digits for a product. And that works out to be a huge amount of inventory. And so we set up black and white bars to identify the different numbers that would be assigned to each product. So each product gets a singular number everywhere it goes. And we have this code that makes it easy for us to read it very quickly at the check stand.
So, when it was first designed, I mean, a lot of us can. I was already working at SHI when we dealt with Y2K. Did you have any technology limitations like that where you kind of laugh about now, where it's like, well, that would never be a problem now? But did you have any limitations based on the equipment being used?
Oh, sure. Lots of it. The first symbol was actually invented by another gentleman about 20 years before us, and that was a bullseye code, which was easier to scan. But it didn't work, and one of the reasons it didn't work is for the reason you just asked a question of. It was very difficult to get a good light source that would illuminate it,
Mm,
and that you could also have it be precise enough, small enough, and have enough resolution that you could reliably read it. And that was a big problem with that bullseye or circular code that had been invented back in the 1940s. And even if they had a perfect light source, it wouldn't have worked very well. However, our code did work very well, but it did need a good light source, and that light source was a laser, a helium neon, half a milliwatt, very, very small laser light that became inexpensive. And before that, people tried airplane landing lamps. And my joke was that it would defrost all the food that came out of the freezer as it went across the check stand. So that was one thing. Other things were communications. The way to get the scanned signal to the back room of the supermarket, uh, and then back again to the check stand, uh, and do that for every check stand in the store, up to 40 in a great big cash and carry store, uh, and do it very fast. That required new technology and required more new technology to record the data and read it back fast enough. And that again uh, wasn't available earlier. And we pulled all that stuff together, and we were fortunate enough to be able to do it at the time. And for cost, we were just coming into the beginning age of integrated circuits, and that made the circuitry to analyze all this scanning stuff much cheaper. It was very rudimentary. 300 circuits per integrated circuit, and now you have what, 300 million circuits in an integrated circuit, but we had just 300, period. But it did make it cheaper than having one. And so that was those were things that were extremely different at that time.
I love that you gave me the perfect segue, and we're going to get back to airplane landing lamps in a second. And you probably know why after this question. So you're originally from Dayton, Ohio, which is home to NCR, then called National Cash Register Company. I'm thinking to myself, is this like having the Beatles all grow up in Liverpool at the same time? Like, was this meant to be? When can you tell us about the origin story of the barcode, and where were you, and where did you get this idea from, and is there any tie into the fact that the largest cash register company in the world is in the same town that you're from?
There's a much bigger tie than you might imagine. When I was a kid growing up in Dayton, my parents didn't work there, but my buddy's parents did. And NCR had a place called Old River, which was one of the nicest recreational corporate things going on anywhere around the country. So I went swimming and playing golf there and so on and so forth as just a little kid. And when I graduated from the University of Dayton, I had the honor of being the uh, valedictorian, and the guest speaker was the guy named Robert Ullman, who was the chairman CEO of National Cash Register. And of course,
Mm,
they're a huge company. They had almost 10,000 people there in Dayton, Ohio.
right.
And so I got to know him because we had a lot of dinners together during the graduation ceremonies and so on. And he actually offered me a job when anytime down the road. And so then pass on 10 years, and I've got 10 more. I went to graduate school, and then I went to IBM, and I was at IBM for 9 years doing different kinds of work on computer input output systems, mostly for computers, scanners, readers, printers, that kind of thing, displays. And then IBM felt that, gee, uh, we're just building plain computers, and we don't think that the growth opportunity for computers is sufficient for our growth to continue at its same rate. So we want to expand the role that IBM has, and we want to get on the periphery of computers. So we want to look at applications that will require more computing to be done, but that we're not challenging today. And so The CEO of IBM, Frank Carey, very famous guy, said, "Go to Silicon Valley and buy me a half a dozen companies that are on the periphery of computers." And his staff told him, "No, Frank, you don't understand. The IBM culture wouldn't allow that. The white shirts, the blue suits, the red ties, the black wingtips. No, the staff will quit the next morning after you buy the company." And so. Uh, he said, "Okay, well then go to somebody at IBM and paint a red fence around them, an imaginary fence, so that they don't have to operate like we make all the mainline IBM development people operate, because that wouldn't allow them to get started in a startup situation. So treat them like a startup within the company." So they approached me by luck, and I was asked to find a peripheral job, a peripheral opportunity to tackle for IBM. And because of my experience with NCR, I did look at banking and I looked at airline reservations and so
Right.
on as other systems, but I kept coming back to National Cash Register. And they had 95% of the market at point of sale. And I
Wow.
thought, how easy is it going to be to go after that? Look at, it's all identified, and they've got great big cast iron machines that weigh 500 pounds that have six printers in them. And they've been building them for 100 years with high quality and all that, but they're obsolete and they're not easily convertible. And with integrated circuits, with the PC wasn't to be around for another 10 years, but I could see putting a thing like a PC on the check stand
Right.
and hooking it up to the back room. And so that's what I said. I would like to go after that market. And I approached the IBM senior executives as if they were venture capitalists. And they accepted my proposal and they gave me money, not a lot. 300,000 the first year, a million the second year, 3 million the third year. That's what I asked for. At that point, if it didn't
Right.
work, it'd be the end of it. And so they gave me that, and they said go. And that's when I could see that the retail and supermarket people were calling for item identification, and I had been working in scanning for most of the previous 9 years. And so I went and hired a team within IBM, pulled them together in a laboratory which had an empty manufacturing plant next to it, namely North Carolina. And we came up with the product, and it was uh, influenced heavily by my background and experience with NCR.
Gee, so a beginning in Dayton, Ohio, and then a continued success in North Carolina. This is sounding more and more familiar to me, but we'll get back to that. Let's talk about that team that you hired. In your book, you write about internally hiring a group of 7 engineers that some were considered difficult to manage in other parts of the company. Like, why did you consider this an advantage? And what do you think the innovation of the barcode should tell us about, like, working in a team versus creating something alone?
Yeah, I think a team is the real key to the thing, and you might notice that on my book, on the line right under the title of the book, I put the word team. It's a
Yep.
team effort. Uh, and I think that was very critical. And yes, it is true. Some of the people that I hired had been, some other people didn't want to hire them because they were harder to manage. Well, one of the reasons they were harder to manage is they were individual contributors. They were brilliant people who were challenged by engineering itself. They weren't so good at standing up, explaining things, or interacting and socializing and all that kind of thing. But they were brilliant, and they had a history of inventions and patents. And I just had to find the ones that had the right experience. And I was quite fortunate in that regard. IBM had just opened their Raleigh, North Carolina facility a couple of years before. They bought 600 acres down there and built, I mean, by the time we got done, I think we had 150 to 200 acres under roof.
Wow.
And, it was a very large facility.
Feeling overwhelmed by all the buzz? Think Gen AI might be a game changer, but don't know where to start? SHI has you covered. We're rolling out a new series of executive briefings and workshops focused on generative AI. These aren't just any briefings, they're your roadmap to innovation designed by technology experts you can trust. These 5 new offerings dive deep, exploring what AI runs in, what it runs on, and what it's used for. From establishing your own Gen AI program from the ground up, to high-level overviews of Gen AI in cybersecurity and the Microsoft ecosystem, there's a briefing custom-built for your needs. So what's your next move? Contact your SHI account executive today or head to shi.com to request your briefing. Your journey into generative AI begins now.
So I went down. I was asked to, I started the thing in Northern California, and but we didn't have any manufacturing facilities available in California, and so when I made my proposal, they asked me to go to North Carolina and do the development work there, and so I did that, and I found, for example, two very, very bright engineers that were from a plant in Endicott, New York, which is, I mean, I'm sure it's a beautiful place and so on. I've been there, and it is a beautiful place, but uh, you know, it's cold and it's not a place I would particularly want to, spend a long time in the snow and everything, and it's pretty remote as well. And so I saw that these people have worked up there and then they transferred down to North Carolina because they wanted to spend their later years in a nice warm climate and so
Right.
on that they have in North Carolina. And so these guys had 20 years experience in IBM working in printers and communications. Communications, I mean, just sending signals over telephone lines to printers and other devices. And in doing that, you learn about errors because you get
Right.
errors going over phone lines. And so they learned about error detection and error correction and encoding because you send encoded signals over telephone lines. And so the people that I talked to uh, back in North Carolina that had these experience, they were very exciting to me. One of those was a gentleman named George Lauer, who was my key engineer on the scanner. I put him as the lead engineer on the scanner. But these people had been in IBM for quite a time. They had a great deal of respect in the engineering community. Uh, and they made quite a lot of money. And so they ended up working for younger engineering managers
Hmm.
who didn't make as much money. And it was always kind of a problem because, you're worried about, gee, I'm making way more than the guy I work for, and he's the one that's got to give me a raise. And is he going to feel comfortable giving me a raise, which already
Right.
I'm making more than he is?
Right.
He wants a raise instead. And also, they were just a little fussy about being told how to do and what to do by some younger guy and so on. So they weren't bad people or anything else like that. I mean, the opposite. They were very, very good people, very contributory people, and so on. But the management issues, there were management issues associated with all of that. But I didn't worry about that. I just went and took the best 7 engineers I could get. The seventh one I found up in Minnesota working on a project that had tried this kind of thing earlier and failed. But I saw what he had proposed and I thought, boy,
Close enough.
that's
Right.
brilliant. He was a little ahead of his time. And
Yep.
now another year or two had passed, and I thought we could really implement his ideas. That guy's name was Roger Kaus, Kaus. Anyway, I pulled these 7 people together, and we stayed together, for most of the time. One or two of them left after a couple years, but most of them were around for the whole period I was around. And now I started in '69. The Supermarket Institute put their committee together in '70. Uh, the code was we had done the code by '71, and in fact there's an appendix I put in the book for all those technical people that want to read that. It's at the back of the book, and you don't have to bother with that if you just want to read the main part of the book. But it it describes the code and what we did and how we picked it out and everything else like that in technical detail, all the technical detail anybody would want. And I had published that very appendix as a book and authored it, co-authored it with another gentleman in 1971. So it's all old.
Wow.
It is verbatim old. I didn't rewrite it. That's a 1971 book that I put in as an appendix in the barcode book, so people can study that. But anyway, we did that in 71. By 73, our code was one of 7 finalists that had been selected, and ours was chosen as the winner. And so from that point forward, we could see that, yeah, it was really going to go places. But the team of those 7 people had all the characteristics they needed to come up with the code and get scanning it successfully and so on. And I was fortunate enough that IBM had a really great uh, set of people to choose from to bring into the organization.
Absolutely, and maybe my Beatles analogy is not too far off base. That's from 69 to 73. That's a lot of productivity in a really short amount of time. So you definitely had the right team there.
Yes, and then
Um,
I continued working on it with the same team. Of course, we grew it to much bigger numbers until 77, until the middle of 77. So it took 8 years basically to do the job.
that's pretty stable. When new technology is introduced, it's often initially feared or rejected by the public. Stick it one more time with the Dayton, Ohio, in his biography about the Wright brothers, who hail from Dayton. Um, they're David McCullough talks about how people objected to the bicycle because of what it would do to society. It would keep people away from church. It would keep them too far away from the farm. And you think today, like who could have objected to that? And I kind of look at the barcode. And you mentioned in our pre-interview that the grand opening of using the barcode at one of your test stores was not a success. They had picket lines out front, and then 18 different states passed laws against using the scanner. And what was the pushback initially to the barcode and something that is just so widely taken for granted today?
Yes, I'm going to answer that very directly, but I have to refer back to your previous part. Don't let me forget about your comments on the Wright brothers and David McCullough. I had dinner with David McCullough
Is that right?
about a decade ago, maybe not quite so. And I talked to him about the possibility of writing a book about it. And I even asked him if he would write the barcode, if I could tell him about it and he would write the book. David said, "No, that wasn't in the cards." But he really was very, very encouraging to me about writing the book, and I I really his book on the Wright brothers was one of my favorites. My mother, who was born in the 19th century, remembers the events that he describes in the book as a citizen of Dayton, going out and watching the
Unbelievable.
Wright brothers fly their plane in a cow pasture, Huffman Field in Dayton, Ohio in 1908, 1909, 1910, 12,
Wow.
in that time frame. And she went to school at the school where the Wright brothers' sister was a teacher in Dayton
Right.
at the time, which is pretty interesting. Anyway, back at the
Amazing.
ranch, yes, we did have a lot of troubles uh, with social troubles, basically, with the introduction of the code. And you're right. The first system that we installed, one of those 7 guys was named Alex Soshenko. I sent him up to the opening, the grand opening, our first store, and this was in mid 1974. And it was Tyson's Corner, Virginia, a giant supermarket. And so uh, he called me up in the morning, and of course, I was waiting by the phone to hear that the store had opened beautifully and everything was working great. And he said, "Paul, the store they can't even open. There's a picket line outside." And
Oh
so
my.
they were picketing for the biggest concern that anybody had, and that was that prices were being removed from the items in the store. Until then, every item had to have a price on it because otherwise the clerk a checkout clerk had no idea what to charge for it. So
Right.
Campbell's Soups got a little stamp on the top, and Wheaties got one on the side, and so on and so forth. And so the labor unions had arranged to have picketing done, and nobody wanted to cross the picket line, so the store couldn't open. However, 2 or 3 days later, it did open. People just lost the energy, I think, to keep the picket lines going, and it just kind of fizzed, and the store opened. Uh, but that was the first of many of those kinds of issues, and there were the other issues were uh, such things as uh, well, what are you going to do about laser safety? That was a big issue too, and we I had to do a testing uh, to prove that the accumulation of light from a laser, even a low power laser, over many years,
Hmm.
couldn't cause a problem, and we did that. I had to go. There's a little section in the book called Monkey Business. I had to go buy rhesus monkeys in Africa and send them to the number one set of gurus on laser safety, which was Stanford Research Institute in Palo
Okay.
Alto. I sent them out there, and they tested the monkeys and everything, and then all of a sudden they sent me the monkeys without notice. You can imagine what it's like at the IBM loading dock. You got a truckload of monkeys that are coming in. That's another story, but anyway, the price of coming off the merchandise was the biggest singular problem, and there are 18 states did pass laws that regulated that. I won't say they were against, but they were kind of against the barcode, and because they said most of them said if you have a scanner in your store, a barcode scanner,
Hmm.
then you must put the price on the merchandise. If you don't have a scanner in your store, you didn't have to put the price on the merchandise. Well, of course, if you went to the trouble to spend the money to put a scanner in your store, then you wanted to avoid the expense of having to go put the price on the merchandise because that was the
Right.
main reason for doing it, and have your automatic inventory control and so on and so forth. And so uh, that had been a big factor. Uh, and different governments had different worries about it. I went around explaining to them how we were going to, uh, have a check register printed out that would show, you bought Wheaties, medium size, and it cost 37 cents or whatever it was. And so you got that. And then it turned out that in one of our test stores before the Giants thing was in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and I
Hmm.
was up there visiting at the same time. The Canadian government sent an officer over to consider what was happening at the store and whether the Canadian government ought to get involved. And this gentleman was interviewing the customers of the store, and the prices had been removed, and they were using our scanner. And he asked a little old lady who was leaving the store with her basket, pushing her basket and so on, carrying her cane. And he said to her, gee, are you upset that the prices are off the merchandise here in this store? And the lady said, "Oh no! As a matter of fact, I love it." And he said, "Why?" And she pulled out her check slip, and he said, "Look here, uh, I can see how much each item cost, and I see a perfect
Right.
description right next to the price. Before, I just got a big long slip and it had numbers on it, and that's all. I had no idea. I mean, it's
That was it.
47 cents, 57 cents, $1.40, 2.30, 5.50, whatever. They had no idea what the items were." But she
Right.
said, now I can take this slip and walk down the street to the next store and compare the prices with their prices which are, of course, still listed, stamped on the product. But I can compare and see what I paid. Before, I could never do that. I couldn't remember what I paid for this item or that item at the other store. And this is
Right.
much better for me. Well, we never heard another problem from the Canadian government. Uh, And but we did hear other issues, and but I told that story and others to different legislatures that I went around and visited. I remember particularly going to Montana, and when they understood what all was happening, that we would have uh, prices marked uh, on the shelf, and that almost all the stores for the first 5 or 10 years offered a generous, like $10 or something like that, if you got a false scan, if you got the wrong price.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
and so those problems all pretty much went away. California was one of the law states, and that's where. Well, one of the things I was happening there in Los Angeles, uh, the Los Angeles municipal government would follow uh, a delivery person who was delivering like milk or something into the store that required refrigeration immediately, and they'd put the milk in the counter where it was going to be sold, which is chilled, and then right behind him, the guy putting it in there would be the LA officer from the LA municipality, and he would cite the store because the minute the guy put the milk in the shelf on the shelf in the cooled
Oh,
shelf,
wow.
it wasn't price marked, and then of course the stores complained, well, they didn't have a chance to you know uh, do anything yet, and so uh, that got to be a problem. But the California law was written such that it would die at the end of the year if there weren't violent objections. And so we were able to kind of communicate to all the people around that there are real advantages to this, and so on and so forth. And at the end of the year, there were no objections, and the law just died.
And it seems crazy to say that now, but when you put it into context of the protests in the late '60s and early '70s, there was a real protest culture out there, and something that people were wary of for sure. So
That's
there's no
right.
doubt. I love your story about the older lady who could go down the street with her receipt and compare prices. I think one of my favorite things about barcodes is that to the outsider, it seems like the cost of the technology is mostly they're not really passed back to the consumer. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, there aren't very many costs.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's a fair assessment uh, because they actually make the operation of the supermarket much more efficient.
Right,
You just think about it. Prices are changing all the time, usually going up, right? And
right,
so, if you were shopping, I even remember when I was a little kid shopping for my mother. I could fish to the back of the set of cans on a shelf and find one with a lower price because it had been marked earlier,
right,
uh, and maybe not remarked, or some of them were remarked, and that made the customers feel bad too because they saw, okay, it started off at 13 cents, and then it was 15 cents, and then
sure,
17 cents, and now I got to pay 21 cents because they could see all the old marks on there.
right.
So in any event, that 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 was that was a real issue. I kind of forgot my point there as to where we were going with that. Uh,
In terms of being cost being passed back to the
oh
consumer,
yeah,
it's the
that's right.
efficiency of
Thank
the
you.
stores is
Yeah,
yeah where
yeah.
the
So the costs aren't so bad. So
right.
in the first 5 years they had to print barcodes in the store and in real cheap printers, or
Mhm.
else the cost would have been really high, and um, and then stick the label on the merchandise because this was before the label was being put on by the General Mills or by the post company or whatever that was manufacturing the product. Nowadays 99.99% of all the labels go on at the factory, and they have to print something on the package anyway, and so they just
Right,
put a little label on the corner. The cost is very, very, very tiny,
right.
uh, and so I'm sure that cost does get passed on as part of the product, but it's very, very small. But the efficiency of the supermarket is increased tremendously because uh, they get automatic order reordering. So before they had to run up and down the aisles and look at how many items were there, and then hand write down all of that and carry it to the back room. Now, uh, every time you sell an item and it falls below some hit point that has been pre-programmed into the computer in the back of the store, uh, you buy an item, and so there are only six left in the store, and they say, okay, six is the number at which we reorder. Then the
Right.
system automatically sends a signal to that supermarket's warehouse and tells them to put 20 more on the truck the next day or whatever. So that efficiency is very, very helpful and makes the cost of the operating the store go down. In addition to that, there are a lot of other things about it. One of them is sales. The efficiency of sales is so good because the store can decide, hey, we're going to put this special product up by the check stand and see if it sells any better. Well,
Hmm.
everything sells better there, but
Right.
which ones get you the most revenue and profit increase? So you can test it in a store, in three stores. Say you could do one in Los Angeles, one in Kansas City, one in New York, and within an
Right.
hour, you can find out how that item sells better and how the item that used to be there that you took away is selling worse, and do an analysis. And oh, yeah, it's better to put this item there than that. And then you just send an order automatically to all the store managers in the country. Do it this way, and then they get an increased efficiency by how to display their products more effectively. So there are all these kind of things that work out to be so much more effective, and the checkout lines are a lot faster and smoother too. So uh, the costs are passed down to the consumer, but they're very small compared to the savings. So I think the prices in supermarkets are lower now with the result of all this than they would be otherwise.
Absolutely, and this is one of those technologies that kind of I suspect that the inventors, it's used in a way that maybe you didn't even envision. I mean,
Oh,
is
that's
that
right.
true? Have you ever looked at somebody's using, what you and your team came up with and said, boy, I would have never thought of it for using it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just look at cars. I mean, every time how many parts go into a car? Almost all of those
Mm,
parts had a barcode on them when they started out at the assembly line, and they
right,
they go to a bin because of their code, and then that bin has a code, and that has another code that it attaches to the one that it went to, and there's a lot of automation, and uh, everything happens very effectively. And so by the time you get done, you have a car that's got, I don't know how many thousand parts are in the car. And all those parts had their own little barcode on them at one point in time, and another barcode that told them what line it was going to go on to. And, you
right.
know, a car comes down the line, and, they make different kinds of cars on the same line, and different models, and different, and the barcode tells them which to put where and everything. I mean, and also you can think of Amazon every time they sell you something, I mean, what you ordered, where to send it, what line it goes down, what else goes in the package, what size box it goes in. That's all barcoded and automatic, and it transfers around and so on. And everything is made very much more efficiently, to the tune, as you pointed out, 10 billion with a B of these things scanned every day. Uh, and a lot of it isn't even the consumer. A lot of it is in the back rooms, lining stuff up to, get manufactured, get assembled, and get mailed, and come to you in the right place.
I was thinking that QR codes, to the younger generation, QR codes are so much more out front, and like barcodes are the thing that's kind of always been there, but the
Yeah,
QR codes get the attention
right,
because you could be out anywhere and then you use your phone on a QR code. I
right.
still like getting a menu in my hand. I don't like when you go to a restaurant you have to
Yeah,
take a picture of the
yeah.
QR code, but
Yeah. Well,
um,
the
what
QR
was
code is I view it as an extension of the barcode. The barcode, we
absolutely
scan in one line, in one direction. Uh, and but with the QR code, you take advantage of the fact that computers and technology and integrated circuits are so much more effective now than they were before. So it's very easy to translate that, add also the second dimension. So it's a really two-dimensional, I mean, it's an area thing, you can scan right to left and top to bottom. And so the QR code goes by little spatial squares. So they take up an area as opposed to just a line. And
Right.
so it means that you have tremendously more data bits available on every code of QR type than you do on the other. On the other hand, it's more complex and you have to scan it differently and so on and so forth. So I don't think it's going to replace the barcode. The barcode is so simple, so easy, so much done in so many places in the world. If you only need to put enough digits on to identify an item, then you don't need a QR code. Now, if you have a different application and you want to know a whole bunch of things about something, then the QR code is fantastic, and you can go with that. So I think the QR code is going to expand tremendously, and there may be other things like RFID and so on and so forth, radio frequency identification, that will come into play more so in the future. But I got a feeling that barcode, even though it's been there for 50 years, I think it's going to hang around for quite a lot longer because these other things aren't going to be as cheap. I mean, we're talking about fractions of a cent uh, to to put them on the merchandise. And so,
Well, if nothing else, I know it'll be with us through this younger generation than me because I've actually seen barcode tattoos out there. Like there's actually
I haven't seen one of those. That's very good.
Oh yeah, if you go ahead and Google that, and I'm just like, wait a minute, like, and to that person it means something. So I'm just gonna assume that they got their numbers right.
Yeah. I wonder if they have to, if they wear the price on their nose or anything, I mean, they take the price off when they put the barcode on.
Absolutely. Well, Paul, thanks so much for being here. I'm just looking. I literally could go on for an hour or two, but your new book. Hold on, I just want to make sure I get it right. The Barcode: How a Team Created One of the World's Most Ubiquitous Technologies is available where books are sold. I just want to say thank you so much, for taking the time to share your knowledge and insight with us. It was a real pleasure meeting you.
I really enjoyed it, Ed. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So the story of the barcode is a fascinating tale of innovation. It's a great reminder of the power of innovating in teams and good leadership. Thanks again for sharing your tips for current business leaders looking to innovate and build on their own legacies. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us. Make sure to follow and subscribe to Innovation Heroes wherever you get your podcast. Plus, new episodes are now available on YouTube, like this one right now. We'll be back with another inspiring hero in 2 weeks. Until then, I'm your host, Ed McNamara, and this is Innovation Heroes. This episode is also brought to you by SHI's all-new generative AI briefings. Uncover your roadmap to innovation with a series of briefings and workshops designed by our technology experts. Contact your account executive or visit shi.com to learn more about our all-new executive briefings for generative AI.